The River Thames in London has always been a bustling waterway, but beneath its murky surface, it holds some of history's darkest secrets. On the bleak afternoon of April 4th, 1896, a local fisherman was casting his nets into the freezing river. As he dragged his heavy net back toward the shore, he noticed something large and unusual caught in the mesh. Assuming it was just debris or a dead fish, he pulled it onto the muddy bank. It was a heavy, tightly bound package, completely wrapped in thick, industrial-grade tape. Curious, the fisherman grabbed his knife and sliced through the thick layers of tape. When the package fell open, he stumbled backward, letting out a horrified scream. Inside the package was the lifeless body of a baby girl, no older than a year. But it wasn't an accidental drowning. The baby had been meticulously and brutally bound. Thick strips of medical tape were wrapped violently tight around her tiny neck, and another strip was placed directly over her nose and mouth, ensuring she had no possible way to breathe. The fisherman frantically flagged down the police. When the authorities arrived and examined the horrific scene, they carefully peeled the tape back from the infant's neck. Hidden underneath the layers of adhesive was a small, waterlogged piece of paper. Written on it was a name. The killer wasn't trying to hide the child's identity. They were openly displaying it. The police scoured the city, checking missing persons reports in orphanages, but found no trace of the child's origins. Realizing that the package had drifted downstream, the police initiated a massive, terrifying search operation across the entire River Thames. They brought in deep water divers and dragging teams. What they found over the next few weeks horrified the entire nation. One by one, more heavy packages were pulled from the muddy depths. Some were caught in the reeds, others weighed down at the bottom. In total, the police recovered the bodies of over 50 infants. Every single one was under a year old. Every single one was packaged identically. And every single one had been brutally suffocated with the exact same type of medical tape, with a name tucked inside. The authorities realized they were hunting an incredibly prolific, cold-blooded serial killer. But why would someone systematically mass murder infants? The biggest clue was the specific type of thick medical tape used to strangle the victims. It was a tape exclusively used by nurses and medical staff. The police began furiously digging through medical records, old criminal files, and nursing home registries. Eventually, their investigation zeroed in on a former nurse named Amelia Dyer. When the police raided Amelia Dyer's home, the horrific truth finally came to light. During that era, desperate, unmarried mothers who couldn't care for their children would turn to baby farms. Amelia Dyer ran one of these facilities. She would charge these desperate women a heavy upfront fee, promising to adopt their babies and provide them with a loving, safe home. But Amelia had no intention of caring for them. To maximize her dark profits, the moment the mothers handed over the money and walked away, Amelia would immediately take the infants, strangle them with her medical tape, wrap them in paper, and throw them into the River Thames. She had been doing it for decades. While only 50 bodies were recovered from the river, historians and investigators believe Amelia Dyer actually murdered closer to 400 infants during her lifetime, making her one of the most prolific and evil serial killers in human history. She was quickly tried, convicted, and hanged by the neck until dead, putting an end to her reign of absolute terror. There is a very fine line between true love and absolute morbid obsession. Dr. Karl Tanzler was born in Germany. Ever since he was a young boy, he was plagued by a recurring, incredibly vivid dream. In the dream, a beautiful young woman with long dark hair would appear to him. In these visions, the ghost of his dead ancestor would whisper in his ear, promising that this dark-haired woman was his ultimate soulmate, and that one day he would find her. Karl believed the dream with his entire heart. After World War I, his life turned upside down, and he immigrated to the United States, eventually getting a job as an X-ray technician in a Florida hospital. Realizing his dream girl was never going to show up, Karl eventually gave up, married a normal woman, and had 2 children. But in 1930, Karl was now 62 years old and separated from his family. On the afternoon of April 22nd, a 30-year-old patient walked into his hospital for an examination. Her name was Maria Elena. When Carl looked at her, his heart completely stopped. Standing right in front of him, in the flesh, was the exact same dark-haired, beautiful woman from his childhood dreams. The vision he had waited over 50 years for was finally real, but the reality was a nightmare. Elena was diagnosed with terminal tuberculosis, a disease that was a virtual death sentence at the time. Furthermore, she was already married, though her husband had abandoned her after she suffered a tragic miscarriage. Consumed by his obsession, Carl confessed his childhood dream to Elena. While she was confused and hesitant, she allowed Carl to treat her. When the hospital finally discharged her, stating there was nothing more they could do, Carl refused to let her go. He visited her parents' house every single day, stealing expensive medical equipment and medicines from the hospital to treat her in her bed. He spent hours talking to her, convinced that they were destined to be together. But destiny had other plans. On April 25, 1931, Elena succumbed to the disease and passed away. Carl was entirely devastated. He begged Elena's family to let him pay for her funeral. Believing he was just a wealthy, caring doctor, they agreed. Carl built a massive, expensive stone mausoleum in the local cemetery and placed Elena's body inside. For 2 straight years, Carl visited the tomb every single night. He would sit by her grave for hours in the dark, having full conversations with the dead woman. Elena's family thought it was strange, but harmless. However, in 1933, Carl suddenly stopped visiting the cemetery. Years passed. It was now 1938, 7 full years since Elena had died. Elena's older sister began to feel deeply suspicious. Why would a man who was so violently obsessed with her sister suddenly never visit her grave again, even though he still lived in the same town? Determined to get answers, the sister drove to Carl's house. The front door was unlocked. She rang the bell, and Carl greeted her with a creepy, unsettling smile. He invited her inside. While he went to the kitchen to fetch water, the sister wandered down the hallway and peeked into Carl's bedroom. Her blood ran completely cold. Laying in Carl's bed was a human corpse, dressed in an elegant bridal gown. The sister approached the bed in sheer horror. The face of the corpse was heavily reconstructed with wax and plaster of Paris. The eyes were fake, made of glass. But beneath the wax and the heavy smell of cheap perfume, the sister instantly recognized the decaying facial structure. It was Elena. The sister ran screaming from the house and immediately called the police. When the authorities raided the home, Carl didn't even try to lie. He proudly admitted that it was Elena's body. He explained that after 2 years of visiting her grave, the ghost of his ancestor returned to his dreams, telling him that he shouldn't have left his true love in the cold dirt. Driven by absolute madness, Carl had snuck into the cemetery in the dead of night, dug up Elena's rotting corpse, and carried her back to his house. Because her body was decomposing, he used wire to hold her bones together, stuffed her chest cavity with rags, and sculpted a new face out of wax and plaster. For 7 straight years, Carl Tanzler lived, ate, and slept in the exact same bed with the rotting corpse of the woman he was obsessed with, treating her as his living wife. The police arrested Carl, but shockingly the statute of limitations for grave robbing had expired. Due to a legal loophole and his severe mental state, Carl was released without any prison time. Terrified that he would steal the body again, Elena's family took her remains and buried them in an unmarked secret grave in a hidden cemetery, ensuring Carl could never find her again. Carl lived alone for 14 more years, constantly searching for her hidden grave, until he finally died alone in his house in 1952, taking his morbid obsession with him to the grave.